What happens when a secret military supply route hidden deep inside the world's most isolated inland sea suddenly explodes into flames without warning? In the pitch-black hours between July 25th and July 26th, a swarm of long-range Ukrainian attack drones flew hundreds of miles across heavily guarded airspace to strike deep inside the Caspian Sea, shattering the quiet sanctuary of a covert weapons corridor that was keeping Russia's war machine alive. If you want to stay ahead of the world's most critical hidden conflicts and support our independent research, please take a quick second right now to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. Your support makes all of this possible. For over 2 long years, the brutal land war in Eastern Europe seemed completely separated from the high-stakes naval tensions of the Middle East. People watching the news were used to seeing horrific artillery battles in the Donbass or dramatic drone strikes across the Black Sea. Almost nobody was paying attention to the Caspian Sea. This massive, landlocked body of water is surrounded by 5 distinct sovereign nations: Russia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan. Because it has no natural water connections to the world's open oceans, the Caspian was treated by military analysts as a quiet, safe backyard where active warfare could never reach. That peaceful assumption was violently erased overnight. Ukrainian security services, operating through a combined task force of the SBU and military intelligence agencies, launched a daring deep strike mission into these protected waters. The target was not a random collection of passing ships. Ukrainian long-range drones deliberately singled out and struck a high-value Russian warship, a sanctioned cargo ship named the Port Olia II, and an Iranian-flagged merchant vessel sailing nearby. Reports from defense tracking networks also revealed that another commercial transport named the Begi was severely damaged during the exact same wave of precision strikes. When intelligence officers inspected the tracking data for these vessels, a striking pattern emerged. The Port Olia II was owned and operated by MG Flot LLC, a Russian shipping enterprise that was already placed under strict international sanctions by Western governments. For months leading up to the night of the attack, these vessels had been operating as a dark shadow fleet. They routinely switched off their satellite tracking transponders, vanished from global maritime radars, and slipped back in Fort H across the Caspian Sea between Iranian ports and Russian military docks in Astrakhan. They were not transporting peaceful civilian goods like wheat, timber, or commercial machinery. According to official intelligence disclosures from Kyiv, every single one of these ships was an active gear in a dark logistics network. They were carrying industrial shipments of military hardware from Tehran straight to the Russian Armed Force S. The cargo manifests included heavy artillery shells, millions of rounds of small arms ammunition, tactical body armor, Kevlar combat helmets, and critical spare parts required to keep frontline infantry units supplied. To really understand why this strike sent shockwaves through foreign ministries across the globe, you have to look closely at what people mean when they talk about a weapons pipeline. When most people hear the word pipeline, they instantly picture a giant steel pipe buried underground carrying liquid crude oil or natural gas across the desert. But in the world of modern military strategy, a pipeline is a metaphor for a steady, predictable, and continuous movement of deadly supplies from a seller to a buyer. It operates like an invisible assembly line across the water, moving massive quantities of military hardware on a fixed schedule. By using the Caspian Sea, Moscow and Tehran thought they had engineered the ultimate foolproof supply route. Because the Caspian is completely enclosed by sovereign territory, Western navies, NATO warships, and international maritime patrols could not enter the area to board or inspect suspected cargo ships. Now, there were no foreign blockades to worry about, no international maritime inspections, and no threat of interception by Western fleets. For 2 years, this inland sea served as an untouchable sanctuary where millions of tons of arms moved in total secrecy. The strategy worked brilliantly until Ukraine realized that if you cannot intercept a supply chain with a conventional navy, you can build long-range strike drones that do not care about geographic boundaries or sovereign airspace. Ukrainian engineers designed specialized loitering munitions capable of flying huge distances across hostile territory, bypassing enemy air defense networks and locating moving maritime targets on T water. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed the successful tactical outcome of this unprecedented mission, publicly declaring that the results of the Caspian operation were exceptionally strong. The successful destruction of this maritime logistics chain highlighted an extraordinary role reversal in the relationship between Russia and Iran. For decades, Russia was undisputed as the dominant military superpower in this friendship. Moscow was the elite exporter of heavy armaments, routinely selling advanced fighter jets, armored vehicles, and radar systems to Tehran. Iran was a struggling regional POW, heavily constrained by global economic sanctions, eager to buy whatever legacy Russian hardware it could get its hands on to keep its military updated. However, the relentless attrition of the war in Ukraine completely turned that historical relationship upside down. as Russian forces burned through vast stockpiles of artillery shells, armored vehicles, and precision missiles at rates not seen since World War II. Moscow faced a desperate supply crisis. Its domestic defense factories simply could not produce basic ammunition fast enough to replace what was being destroyed on the front lines. Russia was forced to look outside its borders for help, turning to Iran to bail out its struggling military machine. The most visible symbol of this flipped hierarchy was the rapid arrival of Iranian Shahed attack drones on the Ukrainian battlefield. These inexpensive, slow-flying kamikaze drones were integrated into Russia's long-range bombing campaign, raining down on Ukrainian cities, electrical substations, and civilian infrastructure on a near-nightly basis. But as the recent Caspian Sea strikes revealed, the relationship went far deeper than just drone technology. Iran had transformed into Russia's primary quartermaster, supplying the basic building blocks of modern ground warfare, from basic body armor and Kevlar helmets to heavy artillery ammunition. When news of the Caspian Sea explosion reached Tehran, the reaction from the Iranian government was fast, furious, and filled with diplomatic rage. Within hours of the strike, the Iranian Foreign Ministry released an official statement fiercely condemning what it described as an unprovoked attack on the officials, reported that one sailor was killed and another was seriously injured in the drone strike. To demonstrate its intense anger, the Iranian government summoned the Ukrainian diplomatic representative in Tehran, handing over a formal note of protest. The language used in Tehran's official statement was exceptionally harsh. Iran's foreign ministry declared that full responsibility for the dangerous consequences resulting from the reckless behavior of the Ukrainian regime would lie entirely with Kiev and the foreign powers that support it. If you are enjoying this deep, intelligent breakdown of global strategy and want to support our channel as we bring you the truth behind world events, take a moment right now to hit the subscribe button, to your on the bell notification, and share this video with fellow news enthusiasts. Every single new subscriber helps us bring you more high-quality content. Analyzing the specific wording of diplomatic statements is critical because sovereign governments select every single phrase with extreme care. Notice how Tehran referred to the Ukrainian government as a regime rather than using its official constitutional name. This delegitimizing terminology is the exact same language pattern Iran consistently USEs when talking about its most bitter international foes, including Israel, the United States, and rival Arab nations in the Persian Gulf. Applying this hostile label to Ukraine marks a major diplomatic turning point. Iran and Ukraine have no shared border, no history of territorial disputes, and no deep historical rivalries. Yet, by launching a successful drone strike against an Iranian flagged ship in the Caspian Sea, Ukraine was instantly elevated into Tehran's top tier of active state enemies. Iran made it crystal clear to the world that it viewed this strike not as a distant European battle, but as a direct act of war against its own national interests. At the same time, analytical honesty requires us to evaluate the casualty reports from Tehran with reasonable caution. Iran claimed that one crew member died and another was wounded during the strike. However, because the Caspian Sea is heavily controlled by local authoritarian governments, no independent international reporters or neutral maritime safety teams were allowed on site to verify those numbers. In active war zones, governments often manipulate casualty figures to serve their own political goals. An attacking country might exaggerate damage to show off its strength to domestic supporters and international allies. Conversely, a struck nation might highlight civilian casualties to build international outrage, frame itself as an innocent victim, or justify future military strikes. Recognizing these incentives does not mean Iran's casualty report is false, but it means analytical observers must view government-issued numbers as unverified claims until independent evidence emerges. Zooming out from the burning cargo decks in the Caspian Sea reveals that this strike was not an isolated operation carried out in a vacuum. It was just one precise piece of a massive, highly coordinated wave of attacks launched by Ukrainian forces across multiple Russian regions on that exact same night. According to military reporting, Ukrainian long-range strike units launched dozens of attack drones targeting key strategic facilities deep inside the Russian Federation on July 25th. Hundreds of miles away from the Caspian, Ukrainian drones hit the major Tuapse oil refinery on the Black Sea coast, starting massive fires in fuel processing units. Farther east, another wave of drones struck a massive commercial logistics complex in Ekaterinburg, disrupting vital freight distribution networks deep in Russia's industrial interior. In the southern city of Rostov-on-Don, drones slammed into a Maj-OR military fuel storage facility, sending towering flames into the sky, while an industrial plant in Kirov that manufactures sensitive electronic parts for Russian missiles was also heavily damaged. Equally impressive was the precise tactical damage inflicted on Russia's layered air defense network during this multi-target operation. In the Rostov region, Ukrainian intelligence units successfully located and destroyed a vital 92 and 6E gravestone radar station. For viewers unfamiliar with high TCH military hardware, the Gravestone Raider is the essential eye and brain of the advance. D. Russian S-400 Triumph air defense system. It is engineered to detect, track, and target dozens of stealth aircraft, incoming missiles, and low-flying drones simultaneously across hundreds of miles, guiding heavy interceptor missiles to destroy them. Along with knocking out this multi-million-dollar radar station, Ukrainian forces also destroyed a Tor-M2 short-range air defense vehicle, crippled a specialized Pol-21 electronic warfare system used to jam satellite navigation signals, and blew up 2 separate military warehouses holding huge stockpiles of first-person view attack drones ready for frontline deployment. The military logic behind combining all of these targets into a single night of operations showcases brilliant strategic planning. High-end air defense radars like the Gravestone exist specifically to shield military bases, shipping lanes, and fuel depots from incoming drone strikes. By targeting Russia's long-range radar networks and electronic jamming units at the very start of the night, Ukraine created blind spots across the enemy's radar network. With key air defense systems temporarily disabled and local GPS jammers destroyed, follow-on waves of Ukrainian attack drones were able to fly straight through the newly opened gaps in Russian airspace completely undetected. This allowed them to reach distant, high-value targets like the Caspian Sea cargo ships with maximum precision and 0 losses. This was not a lucky accident. It was a masterclass in modern, multi-layered asymmetric warfare. This brings us to a major conclusion about the true nature of this operation. The attack on Iranian and Russian shipping in the Caspian Sea was not a symbolic, one-off gesture intended merely to humiliate leadership in Tehran. It was part of a systematic campaign designed to degrade Russia's overall warfighting capability, proving that no logistics node, no matter how distant or isolated, is safe from modern precision technology. To fully understand how Iran got dragged into this dangerous situation, we have to look closely at Tehran's own strategic choices over the last few years. Iran did not end up in a direct conflict in the Caspian Sea because Ukraine had a long-standing grudge against the Iranian people. Iran found itself in the firing line because its political and military leadership chose to become an active partner in the largest land war in Europe since the Second World War. By agreeing to supply Moscow with thousands of suicide drones, manufacturing blueprints, ballistic missiles, and millions of artillery shells, Tehran voluntarily linked its own national security directly to the success of Russia's war effort. This risky choice has now forced Tehran into a deeply problematic, multi-front military crisis. Iran finds itself absorbing direct military damage across 2 completely different geographic theaters simultaneously. On one front, Tehran is locked in an intense regional confrontation in the Middle East against the United States and Israel, dealing with naval blockades, precision airstrikes, and proxy battles throughout the Persian Gulf and Red Sea. On the second front, Iran is now watching its commercial shipping fleet explode in the Caspian Sea thousands of miles to the north at the hands of Ukraine. Historically, Iran's entire national defense architecture was designed around keeping its military conflicts contained within a very specific geographical area. For over 40 years, the Islamic Republic built its military, its asymmetric tactics, and its proxy networks to confront a clear set of familiar enemies: the United States, Israel, and rival Gulf monarchies. Its weapons and strategy were built specifically for the unique environment of the Middle East. Ukraine was never on that list of potential threats. Ukraine was a distant European nation with which Tehran enjoyed normal, peaceful diplomatic relations. By turning the Caspian Sea into a covert arms pipeline for Moscow, Iran mistakenly assumed that geographic distance would protect its shipping assets. Tehran gambled that Ukraine would be too busy fighting for its life at home to ever project military power into an isolated inland sea thousands of miles away. That gamble failed catastrophically. Tehran now faces the dangerous reality of fighting an unexpected multi-front conflict, suffering real damage to its maritime infrastructure in waters it previously considered completely safe. If you appreciate how we break down these complex military events without fluff or sensationalism, please take a second right now to share this video on your social media channels, hit that like button, and subscribe so you never miss another deep dive update. Just as the smoke from the Caspian Sea strikes was beginning to clear, an even more incredible revelation emerged that sent shockwaves through global intelligence circles. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky went public with a detailed intelligence report that directly connected the European battlefield to the active military confrontation in the Middle East. According to official statements released by Zelensky, Russian military spy satellites have been actively conducting dedicated orbital surveillance over key American military bases and allied Gulf states since early July. Zelensky explicitly alleged that Moscow has been gathering real-time satellite imagery of high-value U.S. troop positions, air defense batteries, and naval installations across the Middle East, and passing that sensitive targeting data directly to Iranian military command centers. Zelensky highlighted a clear correlation between the exact orbital passes of Russian spy satellites and subsequent precision drone and missile strikes launched by Iranian forces against Western bases. The Ukrainian government revealed that Russian satellites were not just taking random photographs, they were actively mapping American and Allied military installations right before Iranian strikes occurred to assist in missile programming, and then sweeping back over the target sites immediately afterward to perform battle damage assessments for Tehran. The level of specific detail provided in Zelensky's intelligence disclosure was remarkable. He publicly revealed that on July 19th and July 20th alone, Russian reconnaissance satellites conducted intensive, high-resolution imaging sweeps over 4 major military air bases in the Middle East, specifically targeting 2 installations in Bahrain, 1 strategic base in Jordan, and another key facility in Kuwait. Releasing exact calendar dates, specific airbase counts, and named geographic locations is a deliberate intelligence tactic designed to maximize credibility. Vague, general claims like "our enemies are sharing intelligence" can be easily dismissed by critics as mere propaganda or unverified political noise, but when a head of state stands up and provides exact dates, specific facility counts, and named country locations, they are inviting the international defense community to verify the claims using satellite tracking data. It signals that the government releasing the information is supremely confident in its technical intelligence sources, leaving zero room for the accused parties to laugh off the allegations without facing hard evidence. This satellite intelligence sharing disclosure becomes even more explosive when you look at the exact timeline of events taking place in the Middle East during that same window. Iran had been launching repeated waves of attack drones and ballistic missiles against bases housing U.S. and Allied personnel across Bahrain, Kuwait, and Jordan. Those Iranian attacks were executed as direct retaliation for an intense 13-day American aerial bombardment campaign targeting Iranian-backed military sites, command bunkers, and drone facilities across the region. That massive American bombing campaign had only just entered a delicate temporary pause during the exact same week that Ukraine executed its surprise drone strike on the Iranian supply ships in the Caspian Sea. Military reports indicated that the pause in U.S. strikes was driven by a combination of delicate diplomatic talks and serious internal discussions within the Pentagon regarding precision missile stockpile levels. Think about the sheer scale of what this timeline implies. At the exact moment American and Allied forces were trying to de-escalate a dangerous confrontation in the Middle East, Russian military satellites were allegedly operating overhead as airborne spotters for Iranian missile crews, providing Tehran with the exact visual target coordinates needed to strike back at American troops. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Ukrainian commandos were watching this entire interconnected web unfold and deciding to strike the physical manifestation of that Russian-Iranian alliance where it was most vulnerable, right in the waters of the Caspian Sea. If Zelensky's satellite intelligence claims hold up under full international scrutiny, it proves that the partnership between Russia and Iran has evolved far beyond a simple transactional trade of drones for oil. It means Moscow and Tehran are actively operating a unified two-way military alliance. Russia provides advanced space-based intelligence and maritime transport, while Iran provides ground munitions, drone technology, and regional pressure against Western assets. At the same time, analytical rigor requires us to handle such sensitive intelligence claims with absolute caution. A presidential statement, no matter how detailed or confident it sounds, remains an assertion from a primary participant in an active war. Ukraine has a powerful strategic incentive to highlight and prove that Russia is directly enabling attacks on American service members in the Middle East. If Kiev can convincingly show lawmakers in Washington that Russian satellite data is actively putting American lives in harm's way in Bahrain or Jordan, it creates an overwhelming argument for the United States to increase military funding, intelligence sharing, and heavy weapons shipments to Ukraine. Moving an allegation of this magnitude from a plausible claim to an indisputable historical fact requires independent corroboration from neutral or third-party intelligence agencies. That corroboration would need to take the form of official Pentagon tracking logs, leaked electronic signals, intercepts confirming satellite data transfers between Moscow and Tehran, or publicly released commercial satellite imagery verifying the exact orbital mechanics described by Zelensky. As of right now, Western intelligence agencies have neither fully confirmed nor publicly debunked the full details of Zelensky's disclosure. The official political reaction from Washington to these stunning claims was remarkably revealing. When pressed directly by journalists regarding the reports of Russian satellites helping Iran target American troops, former President Donald Trump offered a notably cautious and measured response. Rather than dismissing the Ukrainian intelligence reports as fake news or confirming them as gospel truth, Trump stated directly that he would personally ask Vladimir Putin about whether Russia was actively assisting Iran in targeting U.S. military bases in the Middle East. This specific diplomatic response carries deep political weight. In the high-stakes arena of presidential communications, a flat, immediate denial would have signaled that U.S. military intelligence had already investigated the matter and found zero evidence to support the claim. Conversely, an immediate, aggressive public confirmation would have signaled a massive diplomatic crisis between Washington and Moscow, virtually forcing immediate U.S. military or economic retaliation against Russia. By choosing to state that he would personally raise the issue directly with the Russian leader, the door was left wide open. It acknowledged that the intelligence was serious enough that it could not be casually brushed aside while maintaining diplomatic flexibility to investigate the technical facts behind closed doors. It signaled to both Moscow and Tehran that Washington was paying extremely close attention to orbital space movements and covert data transfers. When you step back from individual news headlines and look at all these moving pieces together, a breathtaking global picture emerges. On one hand, you have a brutal, high-intensity continental land war raging in Eastern Europe between Ukraine and Russia. On the other hand, you have a volatile, multi-front confrontation in the Middle East involving the United States, Israel, Iran, and various regional proxies. For a long time, world leaders and media commentators treated these two crisis zones as separate, parallel events that just happened to be taking place at the same period in history. But the explosive drone strikes in the Caspian Sea and the underlying satellite intelligence links prove that these are no longer separate conflicts. They have merged into a single, deeply interconnected global theater of war. Consider the circular nature of this international military feedback loop. Iran manufactures loitering attack drones and harvests artillery shells, shipping them across the Caspian Sea to help Russia devastate Ukrainian cities and hold frontline territory. In exchange, Russia provides Iran with advanced political backing, technical military expertise, and covert satellite target tracking to help Iranian forces strike American military bases in the Gulf. Ukraine, recognizing that it cannot easily attack weapons factories deep inside Iran without triggering a massive international crisis, identifies the maritime supply bridge in the Caspian Sea as the single point of failure. Ukraine then deploys long-range attack drones to blow up the cargo ships carrying those weapons, crippling Russia's logistics on the battlefield, while simultaneously striking a devastating blow against Iran's defense export economy. This is asymmetric strategic warfare operating at the highest level imaginable. Ukraine demonstrated incredible strategic innovation by finding a way to project power far beyond its borders to inflict real, tangible damage on a distant adversary without ever setting foot on that adversary's soil. Kyiv realized that it did not need to launch risky airstrikes against heavily defended military factories inside Iran itself. All it needed to do was intercept the supply chain at its most vulnerable exposed point, cargo vessels floating in international waters, under the foolish assumption that geography would keep them safe. If you want to keep receiving this level of deep, objective, and unbiased analysis on the conflicts shaping our future, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment below telling us what topic you want us to cover next. This ingenious operational model creates a massive precedent that military strategists across the globe will be studying for decades to come. It proves that in the modern era of low-cost, long-range loitering munitions and real-time satellite tracking, no logistics route is truly isolated. Any nation that chooses to covertly supply a foreign war machine now has to accept the reality that its own merchant ships, supply corridors, and strategic infrastructure can and will be targeted, no matter how far away from the active front lines they operate. At the same time, we must confront the immense strategic uncertainties that lie ahead. Will this tactical success in the Caspian Sea permanently sever the weapons pipeline between Tehran and Moscow? Or will it simply force both regimes to adapt, doubling down on heavily armed naval escorts and specialized electronic warfare ships to protect future supply convoys? How will Iran respond if Ukrainian drones continue to sink or disable its commercial fleet in inland waters? Will Tehran feel compelled to escalate its proxy attacks against Western interests in the Middle East? Or will the mounting loss of its maritime assets force Iranian leadership to reconsider the wisdom of arming Russia's war machine? Every single piece of evidence, every ship name, every satellite coordinate, and every official state quote analyzed in this video comes directly from verifiable defense reporting, international news outlets, and official government statements. From the verified drone strike coordinates provided by Ukrainian intelligence agencies to the diplomatic protest notes issued by the Iranian Foreign Ministry, these facts show a world shifting into an entirely new era of globalized, interconnected warfare. As we watch these extraordinary events unfold, one ultimate truth stands out above all else. The traditional borders that once kept distant regional conflicts neatly separated from one another have officially dissolved into the Caspian Sea directly impacts the frontline trenches of Eastern Europe. the security of American bases in the Middle East, and the balance of global power for years to come. The story of the secret Caspian weapons pipeline is far from over. As covert alliances deepen and modern technology continues to shrink the globe, the lines between far-off battlefields will only grow more blurred, proving that in today's world, no conflict takes place in a vacuum, and no secret supply line stays hidden forever.